Today we're talking about NLP Anchoring, which offers you the ability to access a desired state at will. And you've probably heard of Ivan Pavlov, who is renowned for his work on classical conditioning. And what he did is he trained a group of dogs, and every time he placed their dinner on the floor, he rang a bell. He did this over and over again. And effectively, after some time, when he rang the bell, the dogs would salivate. So anchoring is connecting a state with a sound, image, smell, or taste. It's a process of creating a connection between a specific stimulus, an anchor, which could be visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, or gustatory, with a particular emotional or behavioural response. And the stimulus can be anything perceptible, such as a touch, a word, a gesture, or a visual cue. And the idea is when the anchor is fired, it can evoke the associated response automatically. It actually creates a neurological connection in the brain. So let me tell you a story about two Mexican frogs. There was a time, not this time, but another time, and I'm here to tell you a story at this time about that time. And I'm here because I'm not there, for if I was there, I could not be here. And if I was here, I could not tell you the story I'm about to tell you. And if I was there, my story would be very, very different. So here's the story of two frogs, Mexican frogs. As they traveled through the countryside, they came upon a tea party. They had never been invited to a tea party, not even an abandoned tea party, and they hopped on the table and began to explore. Crumpets? What were these dried bread rocks? No tacos? No? Watercress sandwiches? Ooh! What? No beans? And an enormous bowl of some white liquid. As they looked over the edge, wondering what this sea of white might be, both of them lost their footing and fell in. Quite panicked, they both began to swim. They couldn't get out, and they couldn't even touch the bottom. One of these Mexican frogs had been trained very well by his father. And what his father had said to him is that any time you find yourself in liquid or water and you're unable to find your footing, just keep your legs moving. So that this frog with this very sensible father would remember to keep moving and moving and moving. His father used to take him training in various ponds and lakes and sometimes even in rivers. The other frog, on the other hand, had not been trained in such a way. This frog, as he began to tire, he said to himself, oh no, this is the story of my life. Always trouble, always a struggle. Oh, it's all a bit too much. I think I shall throw in the towel. Enough is enough. I just cannot move my legs any more. No, cried the other frog. Stay with me. Keep moving your legs. Just fight, struggle, just do it, cried the other frog. Hasta la vista, and slipped beneath the foaming white waves. As you can imagine, and I know you can imagine, for you have been imagining this all along, the remaining frog rushed headlong into deep despair. Now all alone and depressed, he thought perhaps the other frog might be right. Maybe he should just take one more breath and slip beneath the foam too. And as this thought, among others, crossed his mind, another part of him rebelled. No, just keep moving, just keep moving. He heard his father's voice in his mind. He'd done so much to keep alive, to survive. And with renewed energy, he jumped, he swam, he dove, he kicked, he backstroked, and he swam and swam and swam and kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked his legs. After hours, he was exhausted, and he began to wonder yet again if the other frog had indeed been right. And still he heard his father's voice in his mind. Just keep moving your legs, just keep moving your legs. And just a few minutes later, he looked down because the liquid felt entirely different. And he realized that through all his kicking and backstroking and swimming and everything else, he had in fact turned the cream into butter. And as he stood there looking down at the solid ground. He smiled and took a deep breath in and hopped out. When we work with any NLP technique, we really want to aim to release the highest level limitation first. So that tends to mean that we go for emotional release. Next, we work on beliefs and values. Then we look at integrating conflicting parts. And after that, we work on everything else: submodalities, goals, anxiety, anchoring, linguistic shifts, strategies, and reframing. So let's look into the power of NLP anchoring. Anchoring has a significant influence on our subjective experience. Emotional control is one of the major benefits of anchoring because it can help us manage our emotions by creating anchors for positive emotional states, allowing you to access them when you need them. Behavioural change. Anchoring can be used to change or modify behaviours by associating them with specific triggers. And also, it can enhance your communication. By applying anchors, you can actually use them to increase your level of rapport and influence in terms of leading and pacing with others in a positive way. These are the anchoring techniques. We have firstly inserting a single anchor, and effectively we do this to create what you might call a magic button that we can press whenever we are feeling as if we want to access the desired state. For example, we might want to install a confidence anchor in between our knuckles that we can press anytime that we're going into a meeting or a presentation, or we're going to have a perhaps challenging conversation with somebody. Building on the single anchor, we can also stack multiple positive states to intensify that magic button. We can also release minor negative states such as irritation or frustration by collapsing anchors. And this is where we put the negative state on one knuckle, and then we put the desired state on another knuckle, and we fire both anchors simultaneously and then pull through on the positive anchor. Chaining anchors is designed for more stuck states. So, for example, in a similar way that you might use emotional release in timeline therapy, you can use chaining anchors in the same way. Now, let's say you have total apathy, or let's say you have a feeling of depression. It's very, very challenging to go directly from depression to jumping for joy. And I'm being a bit extreme here. So you actually need some interim step. It's useful to go from depression maybe even to boredom. I'm so bored of feeling like this. And then you can have another interim state, which might be interest, curiosity, or motivation, that then gets you to the next step of engagement. Chaining anchors, we use 4 knuckles to stack various states, and then we chain them together when we fire them so that the stuck state naturally pulls through to the desired state. Be aware that anchors can be visual, for example, stage anchors. They could be auditory, Pavlov and his dogs, or they could be kinesthetic or touch anchors, where we install an anchor in between our knuckles so that we can press it whenever we want that desired feeling. We have some mnemonics for anchoring that can be really useful. The 4 steps to anchoring are, number 1, remembering a past, a vivid experience of the desired state. If we want to anchor a feeling of confidence, we want to ask the client to remember, and obviously we can anchor ourselves, so we might want to remember a previous time when we felt totally confident. If we're working with a client, we might say, can you remember a time when you were totally confident? Can you remember a specific time? As you go back to that time now, go right back to that time, float down into your body, see what you saw, hear what you heard, and really feel those feelings of being totally confident. So we remember the state. As soon as the state builds, we want to touch our finger to the knuckle, and that's the specific stimulus. So we want to get our finger on the knuckle as soon as the state starts building, and ideally we want to take it off at the peak state. So what normally happens is as soon as we see the state diminishing, we remove our finger. Then we want to change or break state by directing our attention elsewhere or the client's attention elsewhere. And then once we've broken state, we want to fire the anchor by pressing our knuckle for a second or so to see if it works. Always use the script. You heard me speak it a moment ago. Can you remember a time when you were totally motivated? Can you remember a specific time? As you go back to that time now, go right back into that time, float down in your body and see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel those feelings of being totally motivated. Okay, good. So there are 5 key elements of anchoring. And these are intensity. So it's much more effective to anchor a highly intense state. And we can notice whether or not the client's really getting into the state based on their body language. Always look for breathing. Next, the timing of the anchor. We want to touch our finger to the knuckle the moment we see the client building into the state, and then release it just after the peak. Also, the uniqueness of the anchor. Can we put it somewhere that isn't going to be touched all the time? So in between the knuckles is a really useful place. How easy is it to replicate the anchor? How easy is it to touch exactly the same place? And are we making sure that the timing as we install the anchor is accurate? Effectively, this is about consistency. The more consistent the application of the anchor, the better it performs. And then obviously it's about the number of times the anchor is installed. So the more events we have for, confidence or motivation, and the more anchors we install, the more powerful and effective it will be. 5 rules that I want you to keep in mind. Firstly, visual people probably find events a lot faster than other people. So often the moment you start the script, can you remember a specific time when you were totally motivated? The visual person's probably there. Auditory and kinesthetic people may take longer to find the event. Also be aware that kinesthetic people often build the state for longer and stay longer in that state, and they may have several plateaus and then start building again. So if you know you're working with a dominant kinesthetic, just be aware you may want to hold your finger on the knuckle for much longer. Installation of the anchor should last anywhere between 5 and 15 seconds. Only anchor negative states once. Anchoring is a useful technique to enhance many other techniques. For example, the fast phobia model. Often we install a positive anchor just in case the client drops into a significant emotion event, or just in case the client feels overwhelmed. And when we install an anchor correctly, it should create an automated neurological link. What I mean by that is, the moment you press the anchor, you access the state. If you are collapsing anchors, the moment you press that anchor, they should feel the positive state. And similarly with chained anchors. That is your overview of NLP Practitioner Level Anchoring, accessing desired states at will.